Dylan Hamar, how's it going?
Not too bad, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How's your day going so far?
Day is going well. It's Sunday, so the day of the Sabbath.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't really observe it, but I do because normally Sundays are for being lazy. But I'd much rather be talking film with someone. So this is great.
Yeah. So no plans today, just hanging out, staying away from the crazy holiday crowds out there.
Yeah. It was pretty bad on Friday. Traffic was crazy, but I don't know, man. I think people are staying indoors this weekend for the most part, which is good. They should, people need to slow down a little bit, I think, and chill.
Yeah, stop buying everything. So can you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about what it is you do?
Yeah. So my name is Dylan Hamar. I am a filmmaker based out of Boise, Idaho. I make movies. I am part of the Treasure Valley film community here. There's a lot of really awesome filmmakers. We have a lot of great festivals here, and love to participate. Love to tell stories, and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So when I reached out, you said you wanted to talk about things like setting and character and ambiguity in film. So we can just dive right in. So first, we'll talk a little bit about setting and world building. So how do you approach building a world that supports your story?
So when you're writing a film, or a story in general, I think it's important to ask yourself like what the themes are, right? Like what are you trying to say? And not just like in what way are you going to say it, but like whether it be through emotional motivation or whatever. I think the setting is just as important. It's like, a film I recently did is called The Rabbit. It's very cold. It's very isolating. And when I think of like, being out in the winter, being out in the elements, I think of confusion, loneliness, desperation. And really that's like kind of the meat and potatoes of what the character is experiencing. So, whether it be you see a setting that inspires you and then you tell a story around said setting, or if you write a story and you recognize what your themes are, I think being able to find a location that equally illustrates that is, just as important. So.
Yeah. So when you're writing, does the setting come first for you, or does it come, after characters and themes?
So it does both. Like I did a film a few years ago called Man in the Hat, right? And my friend and I, we were writing the screenplay, and before we really got going on it, we were like, what's the weirdest location we can make a story in, right? Like what's an everyday place that people don't recognize as like creepy or whatever, and how can we make that such? So we're like, oh, let's do a laundromat. Like people just going in and sitting, in a laundromat, and it's like, how do we shape a story around that location that really like captures like the weirdness of it and how off it is to be in a laundromat and be creeped out? Because usually they're very well lit. I do understand that like sometimes they're in sketchier neighborhoods, but like you go into a laundromat, you just kind of sit there on your phone or on read a magazine or something or people watch. And we wanted to tell a story at that time that was like, there's a serial killer on the loose and there's news reportings of this guy. And then, much like Rear Window, we have a main character that's people watching, and this weird guy walks in and he starts like putting the pieces together. So the location definitely on films like that came first, because sometimes you're in a setting and you're like, oh my gosh, this would be a dope like setting for a film. Like I remember I recently went to Wyoming for a film festival. My girlfriend and I drove 10 hours to get out there, and there was a huge wreck on the freeway, and we were just sitting and people were outside their cars and they were walking around, and there was this little kid that was going around giving people flowers. It was so bizarre. And I was like, man, this would be a cool setting for something, so that definitely happens. Like you don't quite have a story in mind, but with stuff like The Rabbit, a recent film I did, I definitely wanted to I knew I wanted to put it in nature. I was like, well, this guy is in 1910s, he's hunting or whatever. But the reason I chose like fog and snow and a trapper's cabin is because I felt it matched the themes of what I was trying to say. So really, like, to validate people in the way they do things, I think it could go one way or the other. I don't think there's like a set way, like you should have the location first or locations come later, you know. I just believe that a location does need to match a theme, like I said earlier. So
Yeah. Was that film festival the Wyoming International Film Festival?
yeah, so it's the 307. It's the 307 International. It's the one in Laramie.
Oh, in Laramie. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was sweet. There was like, oh man, there was like 60, almost 70 films that showed.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it was like, yeah, it was like 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it was super fun. I've been out there before, and those guys are great. I'm very much a big fan of just like going and watching movies, you know, especially shorts, because they are, you know, low investment, low risk. You know that if something isn't landing for you, it's like, oh, you know, it's 10, 15, 20 minutes and then we're on to the next one. So festivals are fun because of that, I think.
Yeah. Was there anything about the 307 Film Festival that stood out to you that they did really well that we can kind of mimic maybe at the Spark of Madness Film Festival?
Yeah, I think that what 307 does really well, and really all like, you know, the best film festivals, is they really like, they facilitate it in a way that almost feels like a summer camp for filmmakers. You know, you have panels and you have all these things, but there's lots of networking opportunities. And also, you know, people just like, whether it be the festival heads or other filmmakers that are, you know, more renowned, right? Like there are a lot of TV and film people, like, you know, there are people that go there that are Emmy winners and things like that. And I remember last time I went, like Universal showed a movie there. It was just like, but those people show up and they definitely like encourage you to follow the path that you're on. You know, like people are very like stoked for you. And I think that if you can like create a space where, even though it's a competitive environment, you guys are still lifting one another up. I mean, that's the coolest thing in the world. So I think 307 does that really well. They love to prop people up and give them their roses and make sure that everyone like feels like they're doing the right thing in their life. Because sometimes with creative fields like this one, you often, you know, come to these moments where you're like, man, am I wasting my time or whatever? So it's nice to get out where people just remind you of why it's important to you. And like I said, it's like a summer camp, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. So I'll go back to setting, get off my tangent there. So do you find yourself relying more on locations, or do you employ in some of your films a lot of production design?
I think that in this space that, and I'm including you in this because you're a filmmaker too, you know, like sometimes unless you really have the budget for it, production design isn't always like the most, it's not really the biggest avenue where you can throw money at. It should be, but it's like, oh man, maybe you're doing a 10-minute film and you have a $5,000 budget or something like that. You know, like unless you have someone that's volunteering and it has props and all these things or set pieces or whatever, you kind of just like have to go out and find something that organically matches what you're trying to do. Like, you know, like if I had all the money in the world, I could pay somebody to go build a cabin out in the woods and then we tear it down when it's done. But it's like you can't. So it's like you have to go find a trapper's cabin that is somehow still standing, you know, and then you rope those people in and make them part of the experience. But I think what I look for with that is really, it's just like as close to what you imagine as possible. Like, you know, filmmakers are daydreamers, right? Like we almost like, we just imagine and we obsess over how the movie's going to look and sound and how the performances will be, especially writers and directors. But like, if you can get to a place where you find something that gets as close to that dream as possible, like you're set, you know? But sometimes obviously like maybe your set or idea is, you know, otherworldly. So you have to build something that's weird, you know? And So a lot of indie filmmakers, I think we're like scrappy when it comes to finding things that match. But if you can't, you just build it the best you can, without all those resources. It is difficult, but yeah.
Yeah. How often do you write around like a location that you found versus the writing comes first and then you go out and find the location?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, it can go both ways, but I think what it really comes down to is blocking, right? Like you might have when you're writing something, you have blocking in mind. You're like, oh, the character's going to be here, and then they're going to walk to this side of the room, and then this other character is going to react in this way. But then you get to the set where you're filming it, and it's completely different than what you had initially written. So I think the biggest hiccup with that is like maybe pivoting on your blocking. And it sucks because sometimes if you're not able to scout or have rehearsal days on location, you can't really pivot like ahead of time. You have to do it on site on day. So that's the challenging part, I think, of not having a lot of preparation and, finding that location down the line. And, sometimes, especially, what I see, there are filmmakers that find locations like 2 days before they're supposed to start shooting. Like it gets really close sometimes. And, you pivot the best you can, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So how do you use setting? You kind of touched on this already, but how do you use setting to communicate tone in your films, especially for, before any characters speak to kind of establish a tone?
Yeah, man. So like, are you a fan of like Alfred Hitchcock? Okay. So I mentioned earlier, I know Rear Window is like one of his biggest movies, and one of his best, but you remember in the beginning of Rear Window, it like basically establishes all the apartments because that movie is about people watching. Right. And it's almost like every single window that you're getting a glance into is like a different story. And before big dialogue even takes place, you already know the rules. It's like, it's believable, kind of get like your feet planted into the space. And I think one of the biggest problems that people run into as viewers of films is like you don't know the rules. The world doesn't make sense. Like I watched this movie recently. I forgot what it's called. My girlfriend and I watched it, and the world they established was very normal, but the characters behaving within it were so not normal. So there was like a really bad contrast, and it was very confusing. If you use setting to communicate the tone and also help the viewer plant themselves in this, it's like it's getting them ready to go on this journey that you're going to take them on. I think that establishing a world from the gate is important because people want to be in a world that's either believable or understandable and digestible. And with movies like Rear Window, for example, like, from the get-go, you're like, oh, I'm watching apartments. That's what I'm doing. I understand the intention here. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but I at least know the format or I know the feel of this movie. And it's cool, man. It's like really cool to be able to do that. I feel like some of the best movies, again, establish world just out the gate, because if you go in and things are just all confusing, it's very frustrating, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm curious about what that movie was. What was it about? The one you watched with your girlfriend?
Oh my gosh. Yo, can I grab my phone for 2 seconds?
Yeah, Google. Yeah, for sure.
No, well, it was just on my Letterboxd is all.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm on Letterboxd too. I need to follow. Let me follow you on there while we're
yeah.
looking this up.
It was called basically what it comes down to. Oh, it's called Seder. And what happens is it's basically, as it says on here, secluded in a desolate forest, a broken family is observed by Seder, a supernatural entity who is attempting to claim them. The movie made no freaking sense, dude. And, it was beautifully shot. And the acting was minimal, but like in a good way. But like some of the decisions, the world, it just was not it wasn't. I couldn't understand it. Like it was so out there, and some people like that, and I'm not discrediting that. But my girlfriend, her name's Rachel. She says it best. She's like, I don't like movies that make me feel stupid, and my girlfriend has multiple degrees. Like she's probably the most intelligent person that I know. And if she doesn't understand what you're trying to say, I promise you, you're off base. Like, so, but that movie in particular didn't do a good job of setting up the world. It didn't do a good job. Like even the characters, like, it's just like, it was disorienting. And again, like, I understand there's value in that. I understand a lot of people love David Lynch and they love all these things. And I see value in that too. But, as like a creator or someone that wants to tell stories, like, we'll get into this in a little bit with Ambiguity, but like, I think some people really make the mistake of placing the wrong things in the shadows as opposed to like, they're like, oh, here's all these obvious things that aren't plot related, but are plots over here in the corner where you can't see it. And it's like, well, you lost me there. So,
yeah. Yeah. So, well, what do you think of Letterboxd? I never really talked to anybody about Letterboxd. It's just, I don't connect with many people on there. I'm logging stuff and nobody is for nobody. I'm logging stuff for nobody. I'm writing reviews and just, screaming into the void basically. And my watch list on there, my list of things that I want to watch is very impressive. But my list of things that I end up watching is less impressive. How do you use Letterboxd and do you like it?
I love Letterboxd. It's like, yeah, for me, I'm not like a reviewer. I do rate movies that I watch. On the 1 to 5-star scale, but I like it because it's good for tracking movies you've seen. And then like, cause there are times where I'll be hanging out with a friend and like, have you seen this movie? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I go look it up and I'm like, I read the description and I see my rating and I'm like, oh, I did watch that. I do remember that. Additionally, it's cool to have a list of movies to watch. Like I understand like there's a lot of ways to go about that, but it's nice to be able to have a place where you can have a tracked list. You can have a list, a watch list. You can go in and read descriptions. You can see actors and directors and then go to their bios and read their stuff. It's like an all-in-one thing. And not only that, I'm a firm believer that, like, being asked questions critically daily or with activities is like paramount. Like, for example, this is so off base, but I promise, like, I'm going to do a weave here for a second. So with that, my girlfriend and we use this app in our relationship and it asks us daily questions and it gets me to think like intentionally about things. Whether it be like, oh, how do you feel about this thing, or it'll quiz us or blah, blah, blah. With things like Letterboxd, I love it because it really gets me to think critically about stuff. Like I can't just say like, oh, that movie sucked or that movie was great. It's like, oh, was that movie a 3-star? Was it a 2.5? And if so, why? And then I have to think deeply about it. And I think that movies deserve that. I think movies don't deserve just a no or yes swipe. Movies deserve like thought, and I know it sounds so silly, and I promise I'm not up on a high horse rating movies. Like I know everything, but at minimum, like if it's a like 1 to 5-star rating system and they go by half stars, I really have to think deep about why I feel the way I feel. And I love that. So
yeah, I feel like I should start a new segment where I have the guests go through their letterbox and keep going until they find a movie that I know, and then read me their entry. You down? You want to be the first one to do that segment?
Entry, as in like what I rated it,
or like do you put in like a review for each of the movies?
No way.
It's mostly just rating. Okay, yeah, we'll say what you rated. So pull up your letterbox. I want to go through the first like 5 and see if I recognize any of them, like the latest 5.
Okay, phones. Let's go.
This might be something I'd never do again, but I am curious about.
Okay.
reviews.
I want to make it clear again. I'm not an elitist. I'm not a hipster, but I do watch a lot of weird stuff that people don't recognize right off the bat. So we'll go through it. The second one you're gonna get though. Okay. So I'm gonna skip the second one. We're gonna go further if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Evil Laugh.
Evil Laugh. Okay. Nope. I don't know it. Okay, keep going.
Body Count.
No, these sound great though. Keep going.
The Unnameable.
Okay. Nope, nothing.
The Chill Factor.
Nope.
Blood Tide.
Man, are these all indie films?
These are like 80s schlock.
Oh, I love 80s schlock. Okay, so I'm going to circle these.
But Blood Tide has James Earl Jones in it.
Oh, I love James Earl Jones.
And it also has it has Martin Kove as well. So it has John Kreese from Karate Kid. It's very strange. And it's a movie that definitely needs a remake because it is a little bumpy, but the bones are good. All right. Okay. Do you want me to keep going?
What's the number 2 that you said I was going to get?
I rewatched Insomnia recently.
Insomnia. Is that there's 2, right? Is this there's 2, there's the old one and then there's the Shia LaBeouf one, if I'm thinking of the right one.
So Insomnia is the Chris Nolan movie that
that's right.
He followed up Memento. It was 2002. It has Al Pacino and Robin Williams in it.
Okay.
It's really good.
That's on my list. See, my watch list is very impressive. And I actually heard Robin Williams perform. He's kind of like the bad guy in Insomnia, isn't he? He's kind of like a creep or something.
Yeah, he's the villain for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm useless on my end. What rating did you give Insomnia then?
I gave Insomnia a 3.5.
A 3.5. That's pretty good. I feel like
well, the thing is that like, man, I think about Chris Nolan, who's spectacular, and I think about what's a 4-star Chris Nolan movie for me, and then what's a 5-star Chris Nolan movie for me. And I think about movies like, to me, like Interstellar's a 5-star movie. To me, The Prestige is a 5-star movie. 4-star would probably be something like, I don't know, Inception or The Dark Knight. To me is a 4-star movie. But then like I think about, well, what's a 0.5 star below Inception? And I'm like, oh, Insomnia. And it still means to me you're above average. And I'm really not harsh on movies either. Like, I mean, like I gave, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie 3 stars. So it's like, I'm definitely not like a hater,
Yeah. When you do these ratings, are you rating it like by director and compared to their other work? Or do you just like, this compared to everything else I've seen, on average, this is like a 3.5.
I do it overall. Like that would be interesting though, is like to think about like, oh, this compared to this other film. But there is a little bit of that, right? Like you do have to show some grace when it comes to lower budget stuff or independent filmmakers. Like a local filmmaker here, his name's Cody Newton. He's pretty awesome. I don't know if you know him, but he did a film recently called Death of Snow White, and it was in theaters. Like they did a thing with Regal, and it was in Regals all over the US, and I went and saw it. And knowing the budget of that movie and knowing the limitations of that movie, to me, that's a 3-star movie, right? And you probably wonder, you watch it, and then you're like, well, how is Insomnia only a 0.5 star above that? So, I think you're right. I think it really is like a mix of, like overall versus, you show grace to different budgets, different places where, I mean, like Chris Nolan, that guy can make anything he wants. Whereas, someone who just got into the filmmaking space doesn't have that. So there is really like, you do need to rate them a little differently, I think. So that's a good point.
Yeah, you have to kind of be a relativist at some point. Yeah, it's not fair otherwise. So, So I'll pivot back. We'll start talking about character a little bit. So what's your process for, this might be a pretentious writer question, but I'm okay with it. What's your process for discovering who your characters are?
So like, yeah, man, I'm by no means like a great writer. Like I'm still exploring that over the course. We're always growing, but I think more often than not, like I think a lot of writers base their characters off like someone they know or someone they read about, someone they studied. And I mean, like we all know someone that's interesting that has quirks. They have weird motivations to do what they do, and they can either be like relatable and you have empathy for those people, or they're disgusting and you loathe them, or they can be a mix, really. But like I think about like I think it's like I think most times ideas aren't so original. We end up like doing or rather writing things based off of things we have point of reference for. So with characters in particular, it's like, oh, am I basing this off of my dad or my childhood best friend or whatever? It's like it's so easy because the amount of people we meet in our life is crazy, and everyone is so unique. Almost to a weird degree. So, I've met people that it's like, how is that a real person? Yeah. Like I used to have this boss who, the guy was like a sitcom character. Like it was like he's like a throwaway character on Seinfeld. And it's like, how do you exist in real life, dude? Like everything is performative and it's weird and it's quirky and it's cringy and all these things. And it's like, well, if I was writing a character like that, like I now know I've been in the same room with that character. It's pretty easy to write it,
Mm-hmm. So I guess I should ask, is it always important to you to, is character always important to you, or sometimes, things like setting and plot, they kind of dominate, and even genre, right? Like character might not matter so much in kind of just something that's like a bloody horror film. So is it always, is character always important in your films?
I would say so. I think you're really just like trying to have like a perfect balance of setting, character, and plot, and it's like a triangle, and you need to feed those points equally, I think. And I think they should all complement each other, right? It's like, oh, if this character is having this moment, put them in a space that really like puts that moment under the microscope, and like, let me ask you a question. You live in Pocatello, right? Is there anywhere in your town that like you drive around and you see like maybe a building or something and it like brings a weird feeling or memory to you that like doesn't immediately make sense? Like if you saw a school and that school reminded you of like a video game or something, do you have anything like that?
Nothing's coming to mind. Yeah, I don't get a lot of inspiration driving around Pocatello.
Fair enough.
But
Fair enough.
it's I this is maybe going off track, but when I go up to Montana, even when I'm like out hiking, I do find a lot more inspiration just being out in nature than driving around town. I wish I got more inspiration driving around town, because it's like it's easier for me to make my films in the city that I live, right? But yeah, for me personally, I guess I get more inspiration from nature and being out in the woods.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I grew up in the Sequoias in California, and yeah, I mean, like a lot of crazy stuff happens out there, and and it doesn't have to just be beautiful. It can be creepy or sad or whatever. A flowing river might make you cry. I don't know, but yeah, the thing is like I feel like you should feed all points as equally as possible. Like your plot obviously is front and center, but the vehicle you're taking the audience through, being the characters, they need to be. They don't have to be relatable, but it comes down to what I said earlier about the world. They have to understand the stakes, they have to understand the rules, and they have to really like be willing to go on a 90-minute journey, 90-minute plus, with the people that are front and center as well. And on top of that, like I think that I think that the way that I really like environment is, again, I think environment should really just complement the character and the plot. It doesn't, it's like, I rarely am like, oh, what's a weird environment? You know, sometimes in the past, like I said, I've done that, but really it's like, I think your story comes first and then your character taking the audience, the viewer through the story. And then lastly, like you use your settings to enhance what's going on, whether it be emotional or whatever. Like if I have a character that's sitting in a closet crying, that might not work as well as like maybe they're sitting out in the woods crying, or maybe they're crying in the middle of a grocery store or whatever. It just like, I think that like setting should always like just enhance, right? Like it shouldn't be, because think about this, if you take away one of those things to a big degree, like you have a crappy movie, right? If you have a crappy character, you really don't care, you're checked out. If you have a crappy story, maybe you're confused as a viewer or whatever, you're checked out. If the setting is boring and it's all samey, or it doesn't do anything to make things more interesting, like it's a visual medium. Like you do need to like have like a cool setting that's important and intentional, right?
Hmm. Well, so the reason I ask is when you brought up like the 80s schlop or whatever, it's like I don't see a lot of good character development in a lot of cheesy 70s and 80s horror films and stuff. But they're some of my favorite movies. I mean, this is like a mainstream one, but like Street Fighter, right? Or I guess that's probably a 90s movie. But you know, you don't get a lot of character development there, but I'm still fully engaged. So why do you think in a case like that, where you have something that's kind of like cheap cinema or whatever, or action cinema, why character might not matter so much? What do you think is grabbing the audience if we don't have character development that's like exceptionally deep?
Yeah, I mean, I'm there with you, man. Like, you know, I love, you know, one of my favorite movies all time is Cobra with Sylvester Stallone, you know, and have you ever seen Cobra?
It's on my list.
Dude, oh my gosh. It's so corny and it's so violent and it's so awesome. But the thing is like, if Cobra was made today, I have a little less forgiveness. Like if Jean-Claude Van Damme was in Street Fighter today, I probably would be like, oh, that's funny or something. But like, I do have a little more forgiveness for the 80s and early 90s, or, you know, even further back, you know? And that's why, like, dude, slashers, for example, which is like, you know, the 80s staple of horror, like, I cannot tolerate modern slashers. Like, I can't stand it. I don't like Terrifier. I didn't like Hard Eyes. I just like don't have like, I don't understand why, with like the developments and all the inspirations and things like that, like how someone could just make a slasher that exists around a character that, you know, it's not very enjoyable to watch. Whereas, like, again, going back to like, I don't know, I just watched what was the movie I watched last night? It was the first one. Oh, it was Evil Laugh. It was so bad. Like, I gave it 1.5 star, but it was hilarious. Like, do you think, sorry, I'm flipping it back on you because I want to dig with this, because you brought up a really interesting thing, is like, do you think that if you, like, do you watch Street Fighter by yourself or do you watch Street Fighter with your friends?
I guess I watch it by myself. Yeah, I don't have a lot of movie friends that I watch movies with. So yeah, I watch it by myself.
Okay, fair enough, man. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like I said, like, I love Bloodsport. I love Cobra. I love, you know, I love that stuff. I'm with you. And those characters. But again, like, I don't know, man. Maybe that just like plays into like being a boy.
Maybe,
you know. Like,
well, I was gonna say it's. I think it has to go back to when it's made, like you were saying, because I think of something like a slasher film, and you're right. Modern slasher films, they have to do a lot to to earn my I don't know, for me to like it. But if I go back to something like the Giallo films, right? So something like Suspiria, the original Suspiria, is one of my favorite films. And part of it is because of the cheesiness where in the deaths and like the terrible looking blood and seeing the stab pads where people are getting stabbed, where where you can just see where, and they're very carefully like, so you give kind of like an allowance to, okay, this was made in the 70s and and made in Italy and it made kind of cheaply, and so you give so much allowance to it that it can make it really enjoyable. But yeah, in modern cinema, right, like you were saying, they have so many resources, and so it's really hard to be like, if anything's really cheesy or really poorly done in a modern film. I don't know, I guess we don't give it as much allowance. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, but and some people like that stuff. Like, I don't want to take away from people, because like Terrifier is extremely profitable and extremely popular. I don't like Terrifier, but I don't think people are wrong for liking Terrifier. Because again, like, I bend that rule with existing franchises. I'm going to go see the new Scream movie when it comes out. Or, when David Gordon Green was doing his Halloween trilogy, I was there to the bitter end, depressed like everyone else. But I was still there because Halloween is like one of my favorite movies. But like, I do give a lot more grace to, movies of the past. It's like, as a filmmaker, I think about, I don't want to sound pretentious really, because
do it.
But I look at movies like, in the modern horror space, there's so many like, I don't know, let me just, Robert Eggers or Ari Aster or, any name, insert any elevated horror person here, and the thing is like, the things that they do are so awesome that I'm just like thinking, I'm like, why do I want to make a movie where like there's a masked man just stabbing people? Because like the thing is like, I want to like, like an example is like did you see like the Ty West trilogy, like X and Maxine and Pearl? Did you watch those?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, so in X, it's like straight up like a violent, sexy movie, but like in the middle of it, there's this part where this like these two characters, this like boyfriend and girlfriend, they have this like almost separation because the girlfriend wants to do something that the boyfriend doesn't agree with, and it like breaks his heart. And that part made me so sad. And I was like, see, even though you're making like a schlocky, exploitation movie, there's still something here that like makes me feel conflicted and sad for somebody. And I think that's like really cool. Like there are examples of good slashers that do that. Or it's like Scream is funny and it's like making fun of itself, and it's like calling out all the silliness of the horror fandom or whatever. And there are examples of great slashers. It's just, I want a little bit more, and I would like to make a little bit more personally. But that was a great point, man. Like characters, and there are plenty of movies that are great that don't have great characters. Right?
Yeah. You have to make up for it in other ways, though. You still have to keep people's attention. So
so maybe that means the other two parts of the triangle, whether it be location or plot, like just make sure those are boasted, and real strong.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It can be so many other things. So it's like Suspiria. Honestly, so much of that film is badass because of the music. It's like listening to a rock concert, like the whole thing. And I just love the score by Goblin. So it's like, I mean, that movie, that's one of the biggest things for me. Why I love that movie is the score. So it can be a lot of different things. So
I watched an Italian movie recently. It was called, what was it? There was an Italian movie I watched. I think it was The Chill Factor. I think it was The Chill Factor. And The Chill Factor was an Italian movie. And yeah, the synth player of Goblin did the soundtrack for that, or the score. It was sick, super sick. But yeah, Suspiria is a great movie. And, it's also stylistically just really cool. So there's a lot to like about it. And the remake's dope too. Like I like them both.
I heard that about the remake, that it was actually, and maybe that ties in. Was the remake, did it have more kind of interesting characters, and was it modernized in that way where you actually had some character development and it was interesting that way?
I would say so. Like, yeah, I mean that's what a remake should be. I know there are a lot of people that are just anti Suspiria because they love the original so much, but if you can improve on something, that's really where a remake should exist. So I want you to watch it and then talk to me about it because there are some changes.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so in your films, how do you add depth to characters without kind of like over explaining who they are to the audience, like too explicitly?
Yeah, dude. Like, I'm just not like the biggest fan of like, vomiting exposition on people, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think people want to discover things. They want to feel proud. They're investigators and they're looking at things and weighing all things. And for me personally, just the way I like to watch movies and the way I like to make movies, it's simple. It's just like, just show what you need to tell. Like, you don't need to say what you need to tell always. Like, if someone in your movie's hungry, I know it's easy to just say, I'm hungry. Or they can stumble across like a Chili's commercial while they're sitting on the couch. And then you see this look on their face of desperation and you're like, oh, that dude's hungry, But people are just so proud of figuring things out and coming to conclusions and theorizing and all these things. And a lot, like I said earlier with environment, I think dialogue should enrich. It should be to like add value to what's going on, right? Like if your movie is needing to explain everything, like I think movies being a visual medium, you might be falling or failing at that a little bit. And yeah, I mean, same goes with the last discussion. There are movies that dump exposition all over the place that are fine, but like I like when movies like show me, like let me look at the subject. Let me look at the background. Let me listen to audio motifs or there's visual motifs or whatever. Like, let me get engrossed in this world that you've established and don't just like feed it to me and treat me like I'm stupid. It's like you really have to find a balance between not making someone feel stupid because your movie's too complicated and not treating someone like they're stupid. Like you really do have to like get in the middle somewhere, I think.
So how does that work with actors? Like if you're trying to do a lot of work on the front end to kind of show visually who an actor or who a character is and how they're feeling, and then you have an actor come on set and they try to collaborate with you to kind of deepen their character. How has that worked with your films?
Yeah, man. Actors are insanely like they thrive off of getting into the weeds as much as possible. I've heard other directors say things like, "Oh, be more sad," or "Oh, be angrier." And it's like actors don't thrive well with that, I think. You have to really break it down for them and get into the space with them and like be like, hey, act this out with me. Let's do the blocking together. Like really get in the weeds with them and give them something to like really go off of as opposed to just like shouting simple things like, tell them a story about your childhood and like why that correlates to why you wrote this, or tell them why you wrote this and what it was inspired by and how that person felt going through that or how it made you feel hearing about it, and just like really like give them something tangible because again, it's like some filmmakers are just out there and they're like, do this, do this, do this. And in addition to that, some of them are just like, what do you think we should do? And collaboration's important. And I know you want to get into that a little bit more. But like as a director, it is your like responsibility to execute a vision, and having an actor that has great ideas. Like, I think you should absolutely hear that if it helps them get into the space, right? Like for example, if the scene is that there's a boy and his dog died and you're working with a child actor, you're like, hey, like how did it feel last weekend when your mom wouldn't let you go to your friend's house to play video games? You know, like what did that feel like? And you know, the kid's like bawling because that's the most traumatic thing they've ever gone through. So
Until their dog actually dies, I guess.
yeah, that is the worst thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll pivot at this point, and we can tie a character back in. But I wanted to talk a little bit about ambiguity, which we've touched on a little bit earlier. But do you purposefully leave ambiguity in your work ever, or do you try your best to keep it out of your work?
Man, I think that when you're doing anything in life, if it's appropriate, like you should do it. I don't think anyone should go in with a goal of like, I want to be an art house filmmaker or something. You know, it's like, that's silly. But like, really, if you do decide to use it, like if you write a story, you need to be aware of like what you give people, you know, what the pacing you give it to them, and what you decide to feed them at all. Like I mentioned earlier that I did that film called Man in the Hat. It was in a laundromat, right? The plot made perfect sense. It was like literally just a guy sitting in a laundromat, and there are people coming and going, almost like Clerks, where there's all these interesting characters coming in, and it's really just highlighting characters. But this weird guy comes in, and it's suspected he's the serial killer that the police are looking for and they're searching for rather. And that made perfect sense. We went through the motions, the story played out, and it tied a bow at the end. Everything's fine. It all happened. But the weird guy has a briefcase throughout the whole movie, and he keeps looking inside of it and closing it. And it's like quirky and strange, but he goes to the bathroom, and our protagonist goes over and he looks in the briefcase, and he has this look of horror on his face. And we never explain what's in the briefcase, right? And I remember we showed that at a local fest here, and there were like 5 people that came up, and they're like, what was in the briefcase? And that's fun. And it's funny to say, like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not like playing that game like, well, what do you think it was? Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't, you know, think of it like that, but it's like funny. It's like, I have no idea what was in there. Like, we just left it that way, you know, and that stuff's fun. I think that like those are the fun things you can play with to like give the audience something. But at the same time, like, I think that films that put too much in, like I said, too much in the shadows, it's like very dangerous. And you're really like towing a line of your movie making zero sense. And some people like that and some people don't. I guess it just depends on if you want to be that filmmaker, or, you know, maybe you want to grab as many people as possible. So I'm not going to crap on people that have plots that are, you know, illegible, but
right.
Those aren't the movies I want to make personally.
All right. Yeah, that's fair enough. So yeah, there's some line that we have to kind of juggle, because it sounds like you can leave some things in there where it leaves people asking questions, but they still have to understand the plot. So would you say it's important to you to not have any ambiguity in the plot, but maybe have like some ambiguity sprinkled in throughout in parts that maybe don't affect the plot so much?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like I even think that, dude, like, I don't think the plot has to be 100% on the table, but I do think like it at least needs to, like, someone that has zero desire to explore further should be able to walk away from your movie understanding the foundation of it, right? Like, that's my belief system. Like, you don't have to like explain everything about the plot. You know, you can have little threads that people that are more interested in discovery and investigation, they can kind of go and talk with their friends and, like, you know, have these like fun discussions about, hey, what did that mean? Hey, what did that mean? And you can do that. And I think that's totally cool. But I think on its face, I do think like, I'm trying to give you a good example of this. So, you know, I mentioned Ari Aster earlier, right? So, Hereditary. Have you seen Hereditary?
I have.
Okay. So with Hereditary, you learn that it's like, on its face, it's like this horrible thing happens to this family, and they're going through it, and there's this weird rift between the mother and the son, and hatred and anger and confusion, and all these things kind of like lead up to like a big third act that's just over the top. However, there's a lot of lore with I'm trying not to spoil it for people, but there's more lore there. There's things you can go investigate. There's things that you can go read up on. And you can talk about like, oh, like, you know, to what degree do you like the grandmother, like how far back did this go? Like how many people were involved in this? Like there's just a lot of things that aren't completely obvious, but I think people that watch Hereditary should be able to walk away at least somewhat understanding what the plot and themes were.
What do you think the plot? What do you think the plot and themes were? Like at the end, like I did have some people asking me, "Oh, what did you think? What did Hereditary mean?" And I actually just thought that it was kind of like a, what's the word I'm looking for? I just thought it was about mental illness, and I actually thought it was about how maybe something like paranoid schizophrenia can be hereditary, and it's how it's kind of trickling through all these different people, and maybe that's why we're getting all these kind of violent visuals at the end. So it could be something just as simple as that. But it was kind of like it was ambiguous, and I wasn't convinced that that was right. So what do you think the plot and the what do you think the plot and the point of Hereditary was?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, again, just like on its face, like I always, and I'm not going to lie, I've heard Ari Aster talk about this in interviews, but it's like, it's about grief, you know, and like how, and trauma, and how families react to that. And yeah, it is like, you know, it is generational and all these things. And, you know, Toni Collette's character and her son, and you know, she's hurting so bad that she's just like ripping him apart throughout the movie. And you're like, how could a mother do that? I think it's like, it's just like the places that people go when they're afflicted by something, and the hurt that ultimately leads to like an out of the ordinary character decision, or the way that you react to people around you, and the way that you know, force that hatred on them, and all these things. It's like, it's crazy. It's like, but that, dude, that's exactly what I'm talking about though. It's like, did you walk away from that movie confused?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, well, I felt like the filmmaker was trying to make me feel like I should be confused. Like I felt like that's what he was trying to make me feel, honestly. But I felt confident in my interpretation. I did, until you told me that that's wrong.
It's no. It's not.
That's not what Ari Aster intended anyways.
I don't think it's wrong either. Like No, I don't think so. But I mean, like, my question is like, maybe not the themes, because the thing is like, for all we know, Ari Aster just told a story and is like making crap up later. You don't really know. Like, I don't know if everyone is so artful that they're like, well, I'm going to hit all these points and people are going to feel this way. You know, he could have been silly about it and just been like, I want to tell this, you know, weird story, and then people are interpreting it, and he's like, it's about grief, you know, like that could be what he's doing. But with you, like, not necessarily the themes, but like, did the plot confuse you too, you think?
I don't remember feeling too confused about the plot. I guess, yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, I guess it's been a while since I saw it, but yeah, I guess if there was much of a plot, because it was kind of just like, I don't know how much of a plot there really was. If it was just about kind of maybe this family's descent into madness. But yeah, so I get, did you feel a lot of confusion coming off the plot?
I didn't either. No, I didn't feel confused about the plot itself. And that's what I'm saying is like, I think that if your plot makes sense, the themes can be ambiguous, or like, you know, like you could, where it's like, oh, we interpreted it two different ways. And I don't know if there's like just because you interpret something differently than me doesn't mean it's wrong, right? It's just like your way of taking something away from that. I think that's cool. You know, that's like,
Hmm. Well, I
isn't
guess
that
that
what,
it
yeah.
depends on if I'm saying I think this is what the author was going for, and then the author's like, nah, then maybe I'm wrong. unless I say, oh, the author doesn't know what he's talking about, you know. But yeah, I mean, and that goes back to the whole death of the author type thing. It's like I had Dr. Matt Stroll on, and we were talking about death of the author, where sometimes you'll watch a film and the author will just say something like, this is what the film is about, but your interpretation of the film is so totally different and so like true to you that you're like, that no, the author's wrong. Like so sometimes you can kind of just discard, I think, what the author says, but I don't know, sometimes I think it is useful to kind of take it into account. What do you think?
Yeah. And I think that like artists can sometimes be like up their own butts, you
Mhm.
know, like, like I was watching, you know, back to Ari Aster. I was watching a behind the scenes of like Midsummer, and there was like a lot of stuff he was saying. I was like, dude, that sounds ridiculous, or dude, come on. So it's like, I think if you make something in the space of entertainment, and yeah, you, I don't know, man. I think there are people that two things. I think there are people that make nonsensical art and then they try to pass it off as like, oh, it's art house. How do you interpret this? And it's like, stop. And the second thing is, I also believe there are people that do something without themes in mind. And I'm not saying this is Hereditary's case, because like that movie's really freaking good. And I do doubt that like he just like winged it or, you know, shot from the hip or whatever. But I think that like there are filmmakers out there who just make tell a story, and then like the themes are just ambiguous. Like it happens all the time, you know, like there are movies where I enjoy a plot and I'm like, I don't know what that filmmaker was trying to say, but the plot was cool. And
uh,
that also does, who cares? Like as filmmakers, we try to have a theme, but does Street Fighter have a theme? Like, I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. And I guess that goes back to like, this is going to get real pretentious if I consider Street Fighter to be art, but when somebody's making
Hell
something,
yeah.
yeah, but when somebody's, I kind of agree with you that when somebody's making art, I feel like they should be making it with like a message and a purpose, and they should be going out, like they should be putting their work out into the world and like saying, this is what I believe. Here's my argument for it. And so when you introduce ambiguity, it's just kind of like, okay, well, like, yeah, it's maybe fun to like go and talk to your friends about it, but it's like at the same point, what are you actually trying to say? And you're kind of losing that if you don't make it clear to the audience what the heck you're trying to say. So I don't believe in a lot of, I feel like you should have a clear message in your film. So I guess that's where I kind of land on the subject.
Totally fair. Totally fair. And do you believe that, so do you believe in zero ambiguity, or is it almost like you think that everything should just be on the table? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. I think you can have ambiguity in a film like your, what was it? The in Man with a Hat,
Yeah, like the briefcase.
yeah.
Example.
But I think you can still have, but I think the message of the film needs to be clear. So I think you can introduce ambiguity in other parts of the film to like create interest and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think if you have a message for your film, which I think you should have a message for your film, that it needs to be clear. Otherwise it's like, what the heck is the point of having a message in your film if it's not going to be clear to anybody?
Money. No.
Yeah. I'm sure that factors in at some point. Yeah.
But no, dude, good art. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like it doesn't, I don't think it has to make someone feel a certain way or it has to do anything. But I do agree, like the best pieces of art that I like to consume are stuff that make me feel stuff that I understand and that I value the perspective of the person that crafted that story in the first place. Like I totally agree with you there. Those are always my favorite too. Like that's why movie, like I'm going to get roasted for this. I know it, but that's why like some David Lynch stuff, I can't get into it because I'm like, what are you trying to say? And then they interview him well after the
Yeah.
fact, and he's like, I'm not going to reveal that. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, then I don't understand, and you're not telling me. So like, I think that's a specific type of person. I think that people, in that space of horror, like with Twin Peaks, for example, they like to just feel, I don't know, they like to exist in a really weird world where not all the rules are clear. I'm not that type of person. I like to understand what the heck is going on. And yeah, so I mean, more power to those people, and more power to people like David Lynch, because maybe he was trying to say something, just none of us know what the heck it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny with David Lynch because he's always going on about abstractions, and it's like, okay, but I can stare at a wall and like come up with stories and abstractions in my own head and see little shapes in like the texture on my wall, but I don't think that's like I'm not going to consider the guy who put texture on my walls an artist. Like, I don't know. I just feel like you should have some. You should be like making some sort of point. Like even with something like Eraserhead, a lot of people thought that Eraserhead didn't have like a clear point, but I thought he did. And it just seemed like a guy who was I think I actually heard Bill Hader talk about this too, but it was a guy who's just kind of anxious about having a kid with this woman he wasn't sure about having a kid with, and like his anxiety around like having dinner with her parents and stuff. So you have all those weird kind of scenes with like the chicken at dinner and the baby's a monster the whole time because he's afraid of having a kid. And so yeah, you can go back and you can see that David Lynch had a kid right around then, his daughter, right? I feel like you can still see something in some of those films. But yeah, when you get to the point where it's like maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that, and you have such a low degree of certainty about what the heck the artist is trying to say, then I've kind of like what's the point of you making a film at that point? Like, I don't know. That's just kind of my interpretation. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I don't know.
No, I think you're spot on with intentional. Yeah, like art. You like art that's intentional and was made for a reason. And some people don't, and some people like to just, throw specks at the wall and it makes pretty patterns, like I don't like art like that, but I won't obviously put down people that like to stare at a wall and see patterns. That's fine.
I will. I'll put those people down.
Well, you guys come after him.
Yeah, come at me in the comments.
I support you just staring at the wall. It's fine. But no, I'm with you, man. Like I totally get it. Like but I also I think we agree on this fact too, is like something also doesn't have to be deep. It doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. It's like, no, it can be, Street Fighter, it can be just people beating each other up and, getting flung into TVs and explosions and things like that. And it's fun. And it doesn't necessarily have a theme. I mean, I'm sure there's a Street Fighter the movie fan out there that's like, dude, no, it's like really about friendship and no.
Yeah.
But no, sometimes things are just fun to watch, and that's fine.
It is maybe a pensive meditation on masculinity. That's maybe there's something in there. But
I think you're giving it too much credit.
Yeah. Well, speaking of themes, so let's talk about your films a little bit. Let's get back to you. Are there any themes that keep popping up in your films? Like, what are some of your favorite themes that pop up in your films, and why do you think they pop up?
That's a great question. So, like, so a little bit of backstory. So before, jumping back into media, because I do media for a living, right? My thing is that I used to be a touring musician. I was in a band and I played all over the country and this and that. And I wrote a lot of songs. And just to give you a little bit of an example without going too far, when my dad passed away, I was very angry at him. And I wrote a song at the time, like literally months after he passed away, and it was very hateful, right? And then I wrote a song 7 years later, and I revisited my dad in a song, and it was a completely different song. It was like well, obviously it's an additional song, but the perspective on my dad and like what my thoughts were completely different. But the through line is that I had a dad, and this was my dad, and we had this relationship, good or bad. And like films, it's the same way. Like I'm writing a film right now, and a lot of it is based on my dad, and it's like I'm finding that it's like the best parts of him and not the parts that I used to be angry about. So I think that like I don't know. I had negative outlooks, and in a lot of ways now it's like the opposite. If I go back to the well with like trauma, my parents, things I'm afraid of, expressing how I feel on something is different than it did like 10 years ago. Like I might have made a film about my dad 10 years ago that was like about a really bad dude. And now, as I grow up, I'm more sympathetic rather to who he was, and even my mom and all these things. And I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, your parents and childhood seem to be responsible for a lot of the themes that might be popping up. Do you see? Oh, sorry.
Lot,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, just agreeing with you. Yeah. It's like everything, like I said earlier, like people you meet, your experiences, things you study, I think that like influences a lot of what you make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I found that in my, like the first couple of things I wrote as a, I guess just when I was trying to make movies at the start, I showed them to my sister, and the villain in my films, it kept somehow turning out to be like this preacher father figure. And our dad is a preacher, right? And so she's like, "Why do you keep writing dad into your scripts?" I'm like, I didn't put dad into our scripts. That's just another pastor. It's just a coincidence. So yeah, I feel like parents always creep up into an artist's work and childhood. Do you see anything as you're getting older? At least I have, but do you see anything any themes only recently that are creeping into your work? How old are you, by the way?
I'm 34 years old.
Okay, so yeah, you're around the same. You're a little younger than me, but yeah, as I'm almost 40, right? So I'm 37. So I see new themes creeping into my work. Do you see any new themes creeping into your work in your 30s versus maybe your 20s?
Yeah, I think, because I'm pretty much like, I'm exclusively like someone that loves to make horror films, right? And I think that a lot of the stuff that I'm writing now are things that I used to be afraid to go near because they were just really hard for me to think about and process. And now that I've done lots of therapy and, I've gotten help for my anxiety and all these things, like I'm able to go and just think about, I'm not saying like it breaks my heart to write these stories, nothing like that. But it is easier now that I have a better perspective to revisit a lot of those things and write about them and not feel like I'm spiraling into something because like for most of my life, I like avoided a lot of thoughts. I was like, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to go there. And now it's like my perspective in getting older has actually like allowed me to visit things from the past that I wasn't strong enough to go near.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And also, like I said, man, I'm just like, as I get older, I'm softening up. Like I'm becoming a big old softy, and even people that have done horrendous things and people that have wronged me or wronged those that I loved, like, I can find a way to like really like, I can find compassion for those people. And I think it's like, I don't want every piece of art that I make to be like hateful towards anyone. I don't know, like I said, my dad and I had a very bad relationship, and now that I'm older and I have perspective and I understand why he was hurting and all the things like that, I can write a story that kind of highlights the parts of him that I admire now that I'm older and I understand those things, right? So yeah, great question. Like getting older, like how does that change? I think we just become strong enough to, go near the things that used to scare us off, right?
Yeah. Do you ever find it really fun though to like channel that rage into a script? Like if you have any residual rage, because some of my most fun scripts, like especially for horror, um, is like just writing some really like messed up, bloody, gory stuff and getting that rage out onto the page. Do you do that much anymore? Do you or do you think that your themes, like you were saying, you're leaning away from um maybe putting that rage on the page? And I guess my real question is how are you doing that with horror? If you're softening up and you have these softer themes, how does that kind of work into the horror genre that you love?
Yeah, because I don't think horror has to be violent.
Hmm.
I think that like a lot of it, it doesn't have to like manifest in ways that are like physical harm or a physical threat. Like to me, like, dude, again, I'm going to do the weave again, but I'll come back. When I was a child, I told you I grew up in the mountains, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had a neighbor who lived about a mile from us because that's the closest people we live near, like a mile plus. And this man was deaf and he was an alcoholic. And sometimes in the middle of the night, I would hear through like reverberations through the woods of this deaf man walking through the woods pitch black screaming to himself.
Awesome.
And I knew that I wasn't in any physical danger, but it scared the shit out of me.
Right,
and
yeah.
like I don't know if all threats have to be violent, but to your question about like, do you have like moments where you're able to throw something down? Yeah. I mean, like without going into it too much, there's a character in my new screenplay who loses someone because of negligence, and he's being tormented for that. And it's like it's very serious stuff, and it's about family and like all these things. And yeah, like maybe it's the religious figure situation like you, where one day someone's gonna be like, is this your way of punishing your father? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, but Freudian. There's always a Freudian interpretation, like this goes back to your parents. It sounds like your new script might be a little bit like. Did you see the new Netflix film Train Dreams?
No.
That's a beautiful film. If you watch the assassination of Jesse James or the Tree of Life, it's kind of an amalgamation, yeah, of those two films, which is really up my alley. But it kind of brings up a question. So when you're dealing with something like grief, and you have these terrible things that happen in real life, and you're trying to figure out how your characters deal with it. How do you stay in horror rather than just kind of drama? Because I guess this film, like, he loses well, I don't want to spoil it for you.
Yeah, don't. I just added it to my list.
Okay, I won't. Well,
on Letterboxd.
So there's multiple. He suffers through a few things in the movie, but it maintains, I think, its footing in drama rather than horror. So how do you deal with keeping in, especially when there's not violence? How do you keep it as a horror versus drama?
Yeah, so I'm trying not to go too deep, but on my thing necessarily, but like, I mean, like, there are like violent threats, I guess. Man, I'm like contradicting, but I'll say this. Are you like a fan of Silent Hill? Like, did you ever play those games?
Yeah, I Silent Hill 2 for some reason I think is the only one I really played, but I watched my brother play the first one. Anyways, yes, I did.
Did you play the remake of 2?
Yeah, they did have a remake. No, I think I just played the original.
So
2.
Dope.
Yeah.
But I don't care spoiling something that's 24 years old at this point. But Silent Hill is about a man looking for his wife, and at the end he finds out that he killed his wife. And all of the creatures he stumbles across really are just like manifestations of his guilt and his hatred and his sexuality and like all these things. And the game is not very combat heavy, but it is like, it's like it's just like the look into a man's mind and what he did and what he refuses to see. That's what's scary. And yeah, like there's like, creepy nurses walking around or this and that, but the reality of it is that what James did in that game and what in that story and what James refuses to see, it is like a drama, but it's also terrifying because it's like he literally suffocated his wife to death.
Mm.
Like,
so there's some violence.
Yeah. But
I guess that's off screen, right?
Right. And the actual story, again, I know there's combat and that's violent, but really it's like it's a psychological thing, right? Like, who says that drama can't be scary, or that horror can't be sad? Like it's like, I think some of the best examples of horror are like, something that maybe toes the line a little bit, because dramas are the best. And that I think that's why I don't like slashers as much, because they don't have that emotional element. But it's kind of like comedy and horror, like they're very similar in a lot of ways. I think drama and horror, especially when you get into like psychological horror or I don't know, like the corny stuff like trauma and memories and grief and guilt and all these things, like those are very much like in the realm of like what could be considered a drama. But how do you show that? Like, like violence in the typical sense of like, oh, our character is trying to be killed or someone's trying to kill our character. That's one thing. But like a boy drowning in a lake is terrifying, but it's also sad. And I know that's violent, but that's not like a violent threat that someone's imposing on that child. That's like a kid drowning, So
do you think to make it a horror that there has to be a threat of violence if there's not actual violence?
I don't know. Violence, like physical violence.
Like even in like the Silent Hill video games, like you're obscured by fog, anything can jump out to you, so you feel like you kind of feel threatened by the setting there. Do you think that has to be in all horror that if there's not violence, there has to be at least the threat of violence?
Yeah, I mean there has to be it's like man versus whatever, man versus self, man versus nature, whatever. Like, yeah, there's always going to be an opposing force. But like threat of violence for something to be scary, maybe. Like I don't know, man. I haven't actually thought about that in terms of like how close to the edge can you go before you completely lose the horror element of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny with like Train Dreams. There's honestly moments in it that someone might be able to argue that they are horrific. So you should, after you watch that, you should text me and let me know what you or maybe I'll just see what you put in on Letterboxd. But yeah, it's interesting to think about how you can stay firmly in the camp of horror, and if you need that threat the whole time or violence itself.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I don't know. There are movies like The Burbs or Ghostbusters that are classified as comedies, but they are set in like a horror, a horror realm, right? In The Burbs, you don't ever think Tom Hanks is going to die in that movie.
That's true. I guess
in Ghostbusters, you don't ever think like Peter Venkman is going to get killed off in that movie. Like it's like there are like threats. And as a kid, like there were parts of Ghostbusters that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the library scene scared me as a child, but like it is a comedy. And I know there's like levity to that, but threat of violence. Can I ask clarification just because I want to just wrap this part up. When you say violence, do you mean that like fear of a character dying and like losing their life, or like a character getting punched in the face? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I guess it could be any of those things. And I guess, and it's mostly bodily violence, but yeah, just getting hurt, harmed, or killed.
Yeah, I mean,
It's kind of
I don't know. The
broad.
librarian ghost in Ghostbusters scared me as a kid, but I didn't think she was gonna hurt them. I don't know.
It's funny because
That's
it's with a comedy like that. It's like maybe part of you thinks that they could get hurt. I don't know, some like part of your lizard brain, like the fight or flight response. But then your
probably.
executive functioning is like, yeah, but it's a comedy. You know, they're not going to kill Bill Murray off in the first scene. So yeah, it's funny how you can juggle two different things there, where you can have kind of this almost illegitimate threat of violence. Um, but just based on genre, you know that it's not really going to happen. So uh,
That's a really, like, seriously, that's a dope question though. It's like how close can you get to, like, when you start pulling apart all these things that are stereotypical horror, how close can you get to the fence before, like, you completely lose all of that? You know what I mean? I that's something to really think about. Like, I'll have to get back to you on that, because I don't know. That's not something that I can just, like, extemporaneously throw out there, but you did give me something to think about. That's awesome.
good, good, good. Are there any filmmakers or films that kind of you think inspire your work, especially your current work that you're working on?
Dude, yeah. I mean, like, filmmakers, like, it's the usual suspects. Like, I freaking love John Carpenter. I love Hitchcock. Um, films, it's like I my favorites probably, like, Rosemary's Baby. I love Vertigo. I love Psycho. I love Halloween. I love The Thing. I love The Fog. I love all that stuff. And but then again, like, I also, like, I don't know, I like a lot of stuff, like, I'm inspired by, non-horror too. Like, the screenplay that I'm writing right now is very much inspired by The Missing, that Tommy Lee Jones movie. It's like, that's also, like, very drama heavy. And, I love Robert Zemeckis movies. Like, I love, 80s films. I love war games. I love all sorts of stuff. But in terms of inspiration, like, yeah, movies that definitely, like, teeter on that, like, excuse me, horror slash, you know, like drama element. Like, there's a lot of movies that make me feel real sad. Like, I mean, Inside Out makes me sad, and maybe I'm inspired by that. So, Toy Story or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And is there anything that it's time like directly inspired you to make what you're making now, or what kind of inspired you to make what you're making now, do you think?
Um, what I'm making right now, so I'm adapting a short into a feature right now. I'm writing it. I'm working on The Rabbit, and what inspired that really is, like I said, I mean, like, I've always been a big fan of, like, survival horror video games. I love just, like, waiting until everyone in the house goes to bed. I throw on my headphones and I play Silent Hill, or I play Soma, or I play Outlast or Resident Evil, like, all these games. So, like, my films are really inspired by video games, actually. But in terms of movies, like, yeah, man, like, just like I said, like The Fog, or The Missing, or yeah, Halloween. Like, Halloween's a great example because it's, like, such a simple environmental thing. It's like you have these spaces and you don't know where the threat is, and it's, like, scary, and it's I don't know. It's just, like, getting back to basics. But then I also, like, I don't know. Like, I'm also very inspired by my family, and my parents inspired me a lot. My mom in good ways, my dad in not so good ways. So, like, in the current screenplay that I'm working on, like I said, I'm basing it off of, like, my parents, like, and it's my way of sort of, like, it's my way of intent. Like, how I said earlier with this app my partner and I are using, it, like, asks us questions daily and it makes us intentionally think. Like, I think me writing this screenplay is, like, and being inspired by the characteristics of my father, my mother, maybe some friends growing up. I think it gets me to like purposefully go in and dig and find like the good parts of them. And I'm like really thankful for that. So got off track a little bit, but
I think that's great. I think that's like a great. Um, I think that's really common what artists are trying to do with their art. With your short, The Rabbit, did it just occur to you all at once like a lightning strike? You got that spark of madness, or did you kind of labor over the idea for weeks and it came out slowly?
that was a very slow process. So there's a local film festival called the Idaho Film Family Festival. And every single year they give you like a prompt. It's like you have to be, you're inspired by a director or a genre or blah, blah, blah. But this last year they gave us decade, right? And I pulled 2000s and I was like, oh my gosh, like way to really, push me into a corner here. And but I thought about the things that I love about 2000s, and with horror specifically, that was really like the rise of the cursed film. And I was like, oh yeah, like the early 2000s, we had The Ring in 2003, and then I think The Grudge came out in 2004. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And I mentioned The Missing earlier. There were still really cool westerns coming out in the early 2000s as well. And I'm like, man, that was a really cool decade. And, I watch a lot of true crime and I read about a lot of stories. And in the 90s in Russia, there was this man that was basically killed by a Siberian tiger. And the tiger stalked him because this hunter took this tiger's kill. And I was like, that's crazy that like an animal can hold a grudge for multiple days. I'm like, that's unbelievable. Like I literally can't believe it. So I started thinking about the things I'm passionate about. And, I mentioned about growing up in the Sequoias. Specifically, I grew up on a Native American reservation. My dad was with a Native woman and I lived on a reservation for most of my life. And I'm very passionate about, indigenous culture and folklore and all these things. So I was like, I want to tell a story that really focuses on, this tribe in New England called the Abenaki. And I was like, that's so cool. So I took the idea of someone being hunted for taking something that wasn't his. And obviously that harbors back to like colonialism and all these things. But at the same time, I thought like, what if it was just like he took a kill, it disrupts the balance, and then nature basically rains down on him like hell, And so I really just like took my time over the course of a couple of months and I thought on it and I obsessed over it mentally. And I was like, okay, I want to tell an indigenous ghost story. And that's kind of what it was. And yeah, it was super fun too. It was something different,
Do you buy into the whole, oh, Native Americans can only make Native American movies, like a white guy can't be making Native American movies, or gays can only play gay characters, fat people can only play fat people? Do you buy into that much, or do you think like if you want to tell a story about Native Americans, like it shouldn't matter so much about whether or not you're Native American?
I think I'm in the middle somewhere. I think it really depends. Like, so like for this specifically, when I did the short, I had a Native American play the Native American character. And I made sure that like I was reaching out to the natives in my life and I was like, hey, is this representative of, is this respectful? Is this all that? So I did a lot of consulting and I'm still doing it now. Specifically, I'm talking to one of the chiefs of the Abenaki in New England. And I'm like, hey, this is where I'm at with this plot point or this story beat. Like, how would you, historically, would this be representative of what you guys do? And there are times where he tells me, he's like, no, that's completely off base. But I made sure to talk to those people and get their insight and their creativity and all these things. Now, on the flip side of that, would I tell a story about like like Black history, or I mean, because you can really like turn that into a fallacy, and you can go as far as you want, and it gets real offensive real quick. You know, like, can I put a character in blackface and they play a black guy? Like, you know, like if you go to the furthest extent of that rationale, like, I think it could get pretty crazy, and we obviously wouldn't want to do that. But I think as long as you're being respectful, you're not being exploitative. And in my case, like, again, I want to make sure that the people that I'm representing are properly represented, respectfully represented, and that they are on board with what I'm trying to say. Because, what's your take on that, by the way? I'm just curious.
I think that's really smart. I definitely don't think you can tell Spielberg he can't make a movie about black people, especially if Spielberg is doing good work to like make sure black people are represented correctly, and empathetically. Then yeah, I don't see any good argument to start telling people. And I can see how it can be a slippery slope too. If somebody's like, okay, well, black people can't tell any stories about white people, then you can't, or, you know, I can just start seeing where you can have conflicts, or like, oh, black people can't tell any stories about this other marginalized group or whatever, you know, gay people or whatever, and it's all of a sudden you're telling a minority group they can't tell certain stories. I had, again, Dr. Matt Stroll on, and he was telling me he had a Native American buddy who's a writer, and he was writing these stories about Native Americans. And then when they went to get published, the publishers were like, oh, well, you can't write that story about Native Americans. It doesn't show them favorably. And then it's like, well, all of a sudden you're telling a Native American artist they can't write what stories they want to write because of, you know, these kind of these agendas. So yeah, I don't really buy into it, but I do think, like you said, you need to do work to make sure you're showing these groups accurately and empathetically. I think that's the most important thing.
And also the key word is marginalize, like, get them involved, you know, like, I'm not gonna like, because here's another thing. In Hollywood, there are a lot of other races that portray Native American characters, and these aren't like your North American indigenous tribes. So like the thing is like, natives are left out a lot of times of the stories that involve their people. And I don't think that's cool. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't want to leave them out. I don't want to be part of the problem. Now, let's be clear here. Even though we're talking about like slippery slopes, that doesn't mean that like you can't gauge a situation and treat every situation as unique. Like, I wouldn't be against like a non-gay person playing a gay character. I wouldn't be against that. But I would be against a white guy playing a black guy.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's just like, I think it's a lot more nuanced, and it really depends on like the kind of harm you'll be doing. And yeah, I think it's real simple. I think if you are concerned about what you're saying, and if it's going to hurt somebody, just go out your front door and ask those people if it's, you know, offensive, and ask them, you know, like you said, do your work, do your research, and make sure that, you know, not only that you can, you know, by societal standards can tell the story, but also just make sure that you're not improperly representing people. Because like, I could make a movie about, you know, a bunch of gay people that are violent or something, and it's like, but that's not representative of the gay community, right? Like, that's not fair. Like,
yeah, and it's tough then also, because it's like, then you can never tell a story about a group of violent gay people, because it's like, what if you're not trying to generalize? Like, that's kind of weird too, because it's like that you start limiting the number of stories you can tell, because people will be like, oh, you're generalizing that to the whole group, and it's like, no, I wasn't, but I guess people could interpret it that way. So it sounds like there's landmines everywhere.
There really is. And dude, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, you could do that, but I mean, you're going to have some people like dragging you through the mud a little bit on that. Like, you can do anything you want. Like, at least if you live in like a democracy, if you live in the US of A or similar areas that practice democracy, you can really do what you want. I mean, the thing is though, is that like sometimes it's not going to be received well or respected or supported. But also like, I think it just depends. Like I don't want to hurt people, so I'm okay staying away from stories like that. I don't feel limited by the fact that I want to avoid putting a thorn in a community. I don't want to do that. So the thing is like, I also, by the way, if you made a movie about, some, like it's the A Team, but it's all gay people, I wouldn't think you're a bigot either.
Right.
Like I really wouldn't.
I'm writing that down. A Team.
The Gay Team. You're gonna have to clip that.
Dang it. Yep.
Yeah.
You get full credit for that. That's fantastic.
That's right. Don't take that.
Yep. Oh man. Well, I mean, it's weird too, because like if you start saying these things like, okay, well, you can't show a black guy to be a black guy to have this negative attribute. He can't have this negative attribute. He can't have this negative attribute because you can only, if you're going to have a black character, he can only be all these good characteristics. Then it's like, it's really hard to write interesting characters when you can't introduce any flaw. And then it's like, you can only introduce a flaw in certain characters or certain demographics. But then your characters, as you're writing these characters from like marginalized groups, they start to be kind of one-dimensional because you're open to criticism if you start introducing these negative attributes. So I'm still kind of learning to juggle that myself. Do you think that I'm like, serious question, do you like really believe that to fully be the case? Like, do you think that if you told a story about an African American character that had human flaws and all these things, do you think like the black community would come after you? I don't think it'd be the black community. It'd probably be the white. It'd be the white community. It would most certainly be the white community, and yeah, I think they would, if they saw that you had a black guy that you showed unfavorably. Yeah, I think you would get some bad press from that. So yeah, I think that's kind of, do you think otherwise?
Man, I probably would have thought that would have been more the case in like 2019, maybe. I don't know if like cancel culture is still as rampant as it was. But I could be wrong. I mean, I think that it seems to me like the world got a little tired of living that way. I don't think people want to be afraid to touch certain things when it comes to, because me personally, like maybe it's just like where I grew up or the people I grew up around. I wouldn't be afraid to do that. If someone wants to call me a bigot because I show diversity of character through someone of a different race, like for example, dude, in The Rabbit, I based the character Gabe off a childhood friend who was Native, and this character, this kid never had my back when I was being picked on. This is like my best friend, and he was afraid to confront his own people, so he never stood up for me, and he never had my back. And there were times as a kid where I got jumped by other kids. So this character of Gabe in The Rabbit, and I think you've seen it, right? So in The Rabbit, Gabe says to Charles, the main character, he goes, this is your burden. I can't help you. And that's based off of a kid that I knew when I was younger who basically did that to me. Now, on its face, someone on the outside could say, well, he's portraying a Native as a coward. And it's like, no, I'm portraying a Native as complex and as human beings are. Like I love and respect Native culture, and I refuse to make them one-dimensional because they're not. They're very complex, and they're like everyone else. They're just like very amazing, vast people. They're different all over the place, and each person is different. So I don't know if I'd be as afraid of that.
Mm-hmm. Do you
I understand your concerns though, for sure.
Yeah, do you not think that like film festivals will look at that and be like, oh, this is kind of a political risk to show this film where we have the villain as a gay black guy or whatever, and he's not depicted in an uplifting light or whatever? Do you think film festivals are kind of moving away from that kind of cancel culture
No,
fear?
no, I don't. I think I think festivals do that all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I don't think about the festival circuit because people can program whatever they want. I mean, I could not get into a festival because I don't have a gay character in my movie. So it's like you're either potentially misrepresenting or you're not representing at all, and it's like you can't win sometimes. So you really just have to go to a festival that appreciates what you're doing and believes in what you're doing, and you're gonna get like most no's anyway. Like I know that like I probably submitted to a festival because I submitted The Rabbit to like 50 festivals, right? There's probably a festival out there that turned me down, and there were plenty that thought, oh, this is a Native American story, but it's told by a white guy. I know that's the case, and like, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, but like,
Please do.
those people can go fuck themselves. I don't care. As long as the natives that I'm representing feel respected and heard, and as long as the audience that I'm showing it in front of has a good time, like everyone else can eat dick, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care. Like, honestly.
Yeah. I think as long as you're not like villainizing a group, then I don't care. Like our film festival is not going to care. Like, and I feel like it's really apparent when you're trying to make sure that like this group, like, oh, this guy's insert, this guy's a Jew and he's terrible, or you're trying to make this particular group like super, like you can just feel the hate coming toward a group and not necessarily a character. I feel like that's really apparent. And of course, like if I see anything like that, where you're villainizing a whole group, like get that shit out of here. No way you're coming in the festival. But yeah, if you have, like characters who are flawed, maybe the bad guy doesn't always have to be a certain demographic. You can mix it up, right? And you can
that's more representative,
Mm-hmm.
like,
yeah,
if you avoid your villain, for example, being anyone but a white guy, like you're sort of like adding to the problem of the fact that people are marginalized, like black people, Hispanics, it doesn't matter, insert any group. They're fucking normal people, dude. Like they're just like normal people, and they're allowed to be villains too. It's cool. Like who cares, but I also just I don't know. I know in my heart that like I don't really hate groups of people I love, and I'm like supportive of anyone that I can be, and I don't have hate in my heart for race or sexual preference or anything like that. I know where my heart is. So at the end of the day, like I know that when I'm writing something, it's not coming from a place like that. And of course, someone could mischaracterize me and say, "Well, you're doing this," but I also don't let the fear of that hinder what I want to do. Like I'd say just do what you want to do, but if you are writing and you're consciously thinking like, am I on terrain that could be dangerous or hurtful to other people? Like I said, just go outside and talk to someone about it. Like talk to the marginalized and see how they feel about what you're doing. Like if you had a bunch of like people of a group say, "Dude, that's not cool," then maybe it's not. Like, and if you're stubborn and go through it with it anyway, then yeah, you're probably going to get shit for it. But talk to people, man. Like, reach out to people. Just say, "Hey, I'm writing this movie about this and I have this type of character. Like, would you be okay with like sitting down with me for a couple minutes and letting me know if you feel respected and all these things?" And yeah, it's cool, man. Like, people can do that.
I agree. It's just like, don't be a dick. Don't hate other groups. Like, and then just make what you want. And like you said, be kind of conscientious about if you're stepping into maybe uncomfortable terrain. Like you've had this character, and then just through writing it, it became something you weren't anticipating. Yeah, go out and maybe do some some sensitivity questioning, or figure out if other people are kind of getting bad vibes from it. But yeah, as long
And
as you
also,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, you nailed it on the head. And also, 50% of that. And also, don't let fear of others' perceptions dictate 100% of what you're going to be doing with your writing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you know in your heart that you are not hateful, and if you know in your heart that your intention is not to harm other people, like, don't stop what you're doing. Like, like, just because you have some like woke white women on Twitter yelling at you, like, that's cool. Like, like, their hearts are in a place where they're defending someone they see as marginalized, and I respect that. But at the same time, like, if you know that you love and respect every man equally, then, just like do that pulse check, go outside, talk to someone in that marginalized group, and make sure that, like, hey, am I doing okay? Or, hey, is this representative of your community? Can you tell me about your community? Like, dude, oh my gosh, like, you're going to have to do research anyway, right? It's like the people that you're doing research with, like, if I'm talking to the chief of a native tribe, and I'm like doing research about the Abenaki, for example, on that same conversation, I'm like, yo, do you think you guys would have killed this person or exiled this person? And they're like, oh, well, we would have prayed for them. And it's like, oh, I didn't even consider that. So it's like you're going to do research anyway. I would just do a pulse check and say, like, yo, is this okay? Am I being loving and respecting? And that doesn't always mean that, like, the characters are without flaw. That just means that you're not portraying them in a way that's inaccurate. Like, I think that's the biggest problem. I think if you had a black guy that was a villain, you're fine. Like, really, I feel in my heart I would be comfortable writing that, but I might not want to, like, I can't even think of an example, but I wouldn't want to misrepresent a community of people, right? So I'm running in circles, but I think you get what I mean.
Yeah. This is kind of the thing that's most exhausting about writing to me, is like, I'm writing a horror film now that takes place in one location, and I'm like, okay, and I shouldn't be thinking like this, but I'm like, okay, I have my lead as a young female black girl, or like mixed race girl, and the mom was black, but she dies in like the first scene. So I'm like, is anybody going to be thinking about violence toward marginalized women or whatever? And so I shouldn't be thinking about those things. I should just be writing, but that stuff is it's still in my head too much. And I need to maybe not think so much about that. And then maybe, like, after I finish the script, if anything, it seems horrendous. Yeah, just have some people read it and send out some feelers and be like, is this crossing any lines? So that's what I find most exhausting about filmmaking. Here's a question to move on from that. What do you find most exhausting in filmmaking?
I think the exhausting part about filmmaking is, like, I think for me, it comes down to my own anxieties and insecurities, because really, if you build out a good team and you have a plan, like, you should be, like, ready to hit the ground running, right? But the thing is like, as a director, I sort of feel this pressure to do right by those people that are helping me make this thing. And that doesn't always mean, I mean, obviously I'm going to go to, hair and makeup, and I'm like, yo, do you guys want, some candy, or do you want a soda or Red Bull? Can I get you something to eat? Like, I'm very big on, like, checking in on people and making sure they're okay. I'm very big on making sure people have proper breaks and lunches, and they don't work more than 10 hours a day. Like, because people are used to going way past that and not being considered. But I want to do right by them also in giving them something they can feel proud of. And that scares me, because it's like, all of us come out and we do this thing and we bust our butts and we work as a unit. And if it comes out as something that's, like, embarrassing, I'm like, man, that's scary, because I want those people to feel proud. And, like, the time that they spent, even if they get paid, the time that they spent doing this thing was, like, worth it. And that they show it to everyone and they're like, look what I made, because they did make it. So I think as like a director, that's the part that like weighs on me the heaviest, is really like making sure that it goes in a way that we can all feel proud of each other and ourselves, and that it's something that we stand by 100% and don't feel embarrassed by. So that's like and that's really just my anxiety. You know, that's like 9 times out of 10, nothing happens that's like a catastrophe. Everything's fine. You know, little things happen all the time. You pivot, you move, you duck, you cover, you dodge, whatever the hell, and you make it you make it happen, and it's fine. But I mean, like, I know a lot of people stress about like what the audience is going to think. It's weird. My biggest stress is like, what is my team going to think about this? So, yeah, that's what about you specifically? Because I know
I find most exhausting.
Yeah, because like you've done filmmaking, you've actually made a feature, so it's like, is there anything that you dread or anything like that?
You know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and it comes down to my anxiety too. Like I had a full-on panic attack the night, like after my first day of shooting, I had a full-on panic attack and I couldn't sleep. And of course, anxiety is just incredibly draining. But it's actually served a dual purpose because it's allowed me to be really conscientious. So it's really exhausting, but it also helps me to exhaust mentally all the different challenges that I think I'm going to bump into. So like it makes me think through every single scene and the blocking before people even get to the set, you know, and I'm like researching everything meticulously, and I have the whole edit basically in my head because I'm so anxious about going in not knowing what's going to happen. So I had like a boat scene out on the lake, and one of the actors was like, I don't know if you've thought this through. Like, it's really complex to shoot a boat scene. And I'm like, I got this. So I had everything, you know, like already in my head, and I got my wide shots and everything. So yeah, it's really exhausting to have that anxiety that I have, you know, every day of my life, but it's also, I guess it helps me out a lot. So I don't know, double-edged sword, but that's the most exhausting thing I think is that anxiety.
Dude, yeah, you're so on point with that too. Is like, people with a lot of fear do anything they can to make sure that fear doesn't become a reality. You know, you're like, you over prepare. Mm-hmm. And then when you get into it, you're like, oh, this is fine. Mm-hmm. I'm okay. Yeah, everything's fine because I prepared, you know, you prepared for it. Maybe, I don't know if there's such thing as preparing too much, but you're afraid, like you're so afraid of the worst that you prepare yourself to battle the worst, and then the worst doesn't happen and you're like, oh wow, I'm good, I got this.
Yeah that anticipation is exhausting, that anxiety about it. But I guess I don't know if I would give it. It's funny because when I was making the movie, as we went along, it like things were falling into place so seamlessly because I had thought about everything. I'm like, this is too easy. Like, like I had thought through things so much that it actually made the filmmaking pretty seamless. Like we didn't have to do many reshoots at all. And so yeah, I go back and forth on how useful it is. If I would cure it, if I could, but yeah. Well,
I don't know. I think it makes you care.
Yeah, it makes life interesting. I don't know how boring I would be, how bored I would be of life if I didn't have anxiety too.
When you stress on something, it ends up meaning more to you at the end of it. You know, you're like, if you were just willy nilly making stuff all the time, like how connected would you be to that thing? But when you like labor over something and you literally are brought to an anxiety attack over it, you're like, hey, this little abusive relationship I have going with this movie is why I love it so much.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely a thrill. Makes you feel alive. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So where should people go to find your work?
Yeah, man. Well, they can look me up on socials, just Dylan Hamar, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I make sure to post links there. You can look me up on IMDb. I have a lot of shorts. The Rabbit's not out yet. It's running in festivals for quite a while, but Just find me on socials and give me a follow, chat with me if you want to talk dorky stuff, or if you want to just like, I don't know, talk more about Street Fighter the movie. That's fine, because I'll talk about it with you. That's what we call a motif. It keeps coming up.
Yeah, a through line. And also find us on Letterboxd. Perfect. Well, Dylan Hamer, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. I'll see you.
See ya.